Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish up today with a special selection. That's where one of you tell me exactly what I need to check out. If you'd like to submit your own special selection and tell me what you want me to listen to, you can find a link to do so down in the description. Today's selection comes at us from Jonathan. Weakling, Dead as Dreams. This is the title track for my all-time favorite black metal album, the one and only album the band Weakling ever released. It's long and the production is rough, but the music is fascinating. And this is just, it's kind of strange. We're going to start off Black Metal Origins Week with a black metal special selection as well. I promise I didn't plan that. This has been in the list for quite a bit of time before we even knew we were going to be doing Black Metal Origins this week. Anyways, we got a 20-minute track ahead of us. Grab a snack, get some water, stay hydrated. Let's dive in. Weaklings, Dead as Dreams. Interesting. That's the second time in about 30 seconds that they've used reverb to make a wall of sounds. It almost sounds like waves, actually. There's a lot of layers on this guitar. Anybody else hearing that? Am I going crazy here? That is a very wide sound. That's got to be a lot of layers. And you can even hear on that note specifically, there's a series of attacks. It's not perfectly lined up either. Yeah, there's a lot of takes going on to make that specific guitar tone. An interesting production though. The cymbal, it's a bit compressed, but clear. Then you get those bass kicks and they're barely audible. Have we been in 6 this whole time? Yeah, so that was slick. They kept the tempo of the 6/8. I could still feel the 6 for a bit in this section. Golly, that compression is coming in hard. And it's interesting, the part before this we shifted to 4/4, now we're into 3/4. But I think what's drawing my attention most is this vocal delivery. To say it's rough might be an understatement. Weird, man. In some parts the song favors treble and in other parts it favors bass, but it's not consistent. Yeah, some really nice polyrhythmic ideas going on here. Yeah, this guitar layering is bonkers though. I'm really curious how many takes they're playing simultaneously. Well, not takes, tracks. Just on the guitar. Just on the guitar. And there's so much punch removed from that double bass kick that it sounds like horses galloping rather than a drum. Ooh. Yeah, put a little bit of groove in there. It's kind of weird, kind of rare for... It's kind of rare for a black metal track to play around with silence. Such a tasty little cymbal line there on the bell of it. Yeah. And interestingly, I feel like we're kind of getting into some post-rock territory here. Once again, though, we have this triplet idea on the cymbals against the 4 everywhere else. It's very playful. That texture layering. Another interesting part, if we count this in 4/4, we have 3-bar phrases. It's so weird how the guitar sounds like there's something going on in the background that doesn't sound like a guitar. Last section it kind of sounded like a violin, but here brass? Anybody else getting a brass vibe back there? Trombones, baritones. Definitely in the post-rock area, at least as far as I'm concerned. Very interesting. And some synths. With like a hissing on it. Lots of distortion even on this. Yeah, and back to this like 4 against 6 idea. Almost sounded like the vocalist was tired, exhausted a bit. Even right here, I think the double bass kicks are in 6, and everything else is in 4. It's constant. It's everywhere. There's triplet feels all throughout this piece. That's interesting. Random right hand volume. And that right there, one of the guitar lines is actually shifting between quarter notes. Oh no, everything's in 6 right now. What was going on? Huge wall of sound on this layering of guitars though. It is filling up every section it's in. Loving how the drums are moving between all sorts of cymbals right here. Giving this section a feeling of movement, of momentum, of change that it really needs. Whoa. I just realized all the work the drummer had to do to fill that space, and the guitars are just amplified so much they're holding out a note to feel full. Yeah, see, we've pulled 3-4 layers away, and there's still 2 left. At least. So many effects on it. You stop strumming and it takes 5 minutes for everything to decay. Alright, that begins the next song, which is, uh, yeah, that's like 15 more minutes. Oh, man, talk about a piece of music. That was, uh, that was an experience. I really don't even know where to start on this one, so I think we're just gonna have sort of stream of consciousness from Bryan. All right. So first, what is the first thing? Production. No. No. Guitars. Guitars are gonna be the first thing we're talking about. So I really wasn't sure when I first picked up on it, but I was validated there at the end, 100% certain. There is a ton of vocals, a ton of layers going on with the guitar. It is ridiculously bonkers. There's got to be 5 or 6 layers going on with the guitar, probably at any given time in the song, other than maybe some of those bars, those single bars of like clean guitar playing. Oh, sort of clean, just not overdriven. There's still a lot of effects on them. Those moments where it kind of gives us a bit of contrast from the wall of sound, there might only be one guitar layer there. But everywhere else, there's multiple guitar layers, and for the most part, I'd say a lot of them are playing something very similar. There are occasions where I can hear two ideas that are playing off of each other or just competing with each other, but for the most part, I believe all 6 are working in tandem to do a combination of pitch layering, which is called harmony. I don't know why my brain decided to be dumb about that. And then textural layering. And the textural layering, I think, is the most important part. However, the harmony cannot be disregarded. It is a huge aspect of what makes this feel so different from a lot of other black metal. There is a lot of harmonic element to this. There are a lot of moments where it's not about a lot of instruments creating a wall of sound. That's not the big takeaway. It's about creating beauty within the texture of the wall of sound. And usually, when we've heard stuff like this, Cult of Luna is a band that I think adds quite a bit of harmony inside of that wall of sound. It's done with multiple instruments utilizing different timbres. It might be different guitars utilizing different effects or different tones or different cabinets and amp combinations or whatever, but every guitarist has their own specific sound that they create, and it comes together to kind of bring the notes together to get the harmony, but also keep the sounds of the guitars separated. And here, it feels like all of the guitar tones, the timbres, the sound that they're going for with the guitars are all identical. So it kind of merges into this amorphous blob of guitarness. We do get the notes, so we get these rich triads or counterpoint or whatever they're going for, but we also just get a lot of guitar. And I mean that both in the raw guitar timbre that's hidden quite a bit underneath the compression and distortion, but we also get a lot of that compression and distortion. And I think that's what really makes this wall of sound feel large, despite there not being much going on. There's a guitar, there's a drum, there's a vocalist. Is there a bass? I don't know. I mentioned that the song kind of jumps back and forth between giving bass prominence and giving treble prominence. So even if the bass was hearable, If there were moments when the guitar was not filling up every inch of space in the sound sphere and the bass could actually be heard against the guitar, it could have also been in a section where the bass range was diminished compared to the treble, and it just didn't have the prominence to stand out there at all. I don't know. I heard no bass in here whatsoever. Everything was just guitar noise, and I don't mean noise in a negative way. I mean they're literally going for a noisy sound. I think that is a compliment in this fashion. That I describe most of this song as guitar noise. I think it's a perfect description of what's going on. So, anyways, we don't have a lot of instruments here to create that wall of sound, not like a band like Cult of Luna, again, for example, who has, six, seven, eight instruments there. So, what's done here is to create a ton of instruments out of one. And this guitar fills all the space of the song almost at any given point in time. And it's kind of twofold. In one, we get this wall of sound, right? It provides this loud, noisy, both foundation and atmosphere, but it also provides some really interesting nuance in both the harmonic and textural aspects, like I just talked about, how the harmonies can come together, playing different notes, having a counterpoint. But texturally, think about this, okay? So dissonance is literally sound waves bouncing off of one another, right? And warbling about, so to speak. When sound waves are working together, when we play notes that are in tune or notes that work well together, they line up and amplify each other. But when it's dissonance, they're sort of bouncing around, they're not lining up. It's creating this warbling, which is the distortion kind of sound. Now imagine you have this crackling, this distortion tone that's not going to line up with anything. Then you make another track with that same crackling distortion. Then another. Then another. And you have all of this distortion, and it's going to amplify, it's going to multiply its own distortive properties. And that's what gives so much of the texture of this song, is having those six overdriven guitars all playing on top of one another, because the distortion is never going to be in time, in sync with the other distortions. It's always going to amplify the distortive effects, because none of them are going to come together to create a unified sound. And to me, that makes up a lot of the foundational sound of this track, is having those multiple overdriven, distorted guitars coming together and just not working together at all as far as creating consonant sound. It is what makes this sound so raw and aggressive and destructive. There is a lot of audio destruction going on in here that works off of itself to amplify the audio destruction. Um, so yeah, they didn't need to put compression on the drums. They didn't need to put compression on the vocalist reel. The vocalist sounds rather raw. There does not sound like there's a lot of production on it at all. Because there's just so much compression and distortion on the guitars, and it's working together to create something that has enough compression for the entirety of the band. And of course, it's going to work multiplicatively in volume as well. So I can't imagine the work the producer had to do to mix this, to make sure that the guitars weren't clipping everything at all times. It must have been a nightmare. So huge props to the producer. Also for producing this the way that it is. It is an unusual production. I mentioned that the cymbals are rather clean. They're bright, they're round, they're full, and then you get the bass kicks and they're muted and thin, lacking punch. I think I made the comparison at one point in time that double bass kick sounded like a stampede of horses more than the impactful punchiness that I expect from them. They sound like muted trampling on dirt. It's it's very strange. Also, they lack volume when they're isolated. When it's just the guitars kind of doing some mid to higher range stuff, the vocalist is just wailing above it all, and the drummer's got this double bass kick thing going. The bass presence is kind of just lacking. But then there's other times when the guitars will go into a lower range, and all of a sudden there's bass presence here. And why isn't that available for the bass guitar? Why isn't that available for the bass kicks or the toms? Um, it is a very strange, deliberate production style going on here. And again, I have to give the producer props for putting it together. It is quite unique, and uh, well, it's quite unique to me. And to me, being that this is my introduction to it, I'm always going to think of Weakling the next time I hear production like this, which just gives so much weight to the guitars at the cost of everything else. Even as far as mixing highs versus lows, trebles versus bass. Like I said, nothing else that's bassy gets a lot of boost in that range, but as soon as the guitars decide to head into that, let's give them the bass boost, and the song feels full. It feels, we got the bassiness to it. Yeah, the production's just kind of bonkers all over the place, but it ties in well, at least as far as I can see, to the interesting turn that the song took in the middle, which allowed it to naturally give all that weight and emphasis and import to the guitars. And that's that the song went from being a black metal track to a post rock track seemingly invisibly. And I think that is phenomenal. I definitely know the beginning was more black metal-y. And somewhere about the 5 or 6 minute mark to the end of the track, maybe not 5 minutes, maybe more like 10. 10 minutes to the end of the track. So the last half of the song at least was more like a lo-fi post-rock. Almost, there were parts actually that reminded me of Boris's Flood. As far as the production goes. Yeah, actually it does. Actually, a lot of that reminded me of Boris's Flood. Anyways, again, another song with heavy emphasis on the guitar work, to the detriment of almost everything else in the mix. Um, yeah, it made this transition. I know where we started, I know where we ended, but I don't remember a transition between the two. It just sort of became a different thing entirely. And that's phenomenal. Usually, you're going to hear something like that. Now, granted, black metal and post rock, they have a lot of similar ideas going on. It's not like going from swing to screamo or something. I mean, you're going to feel the difference there. That's going to be jarring. Here they have a little bit of shroud of invisibility because they're very related. There's some ideas that are going to be similar between them, so the number of things changing is going to be less. It's going to be less perceptible. But it's still phenomenal. It's still wild for me to hear that, where I know we started somewhere, we got somewhere else, and I didn't feel that transition. It's the same thing I talk about when time signatures sneak up on me. I'm like, hey, when did we get into six? Have we been actually that happened in this song, didn't it? Like 5 minutes in, we I felt we were in six, but I don't remember us going into six. It was a hidden time signature shift. Yeah, when I'm listening intently for things and massive changes like time signature or tempo or genre, when those things change, they're usually big. You usually feel them, especially if you're intently listening to it. And for it to go under my radar, just it's always gonna astound me when that happens, no matter what it is. Um, Speaking of time signature, though, because I think that was all I wanted to say about the genre. I remember where I was going with that. time signature is all over the place. We went from 4/4 to 3/4 to 6/8 in 5 minutes or so. And then the rest of the song just danced around this idea of 4 against 6. And there are many sections that I feel could, I mean, the whole song after 5 minute mark, I would say, could be written in 4/4 with some sections emphasizing a triplet feel, or it could have been in 6/8 with some sections emphasizing the first beat of the 3 note groupings. Either one would have worked. Also, I suppose they could have written it constantly bouncing back and forth. There were some sections that 100% were pure 6 pulse and others that were pure 4. But to me, I don't know. I think I'd rather just stick with one time signature if I were to transpose this and maybe make a note about emphasizing a different feel in specific sections just to make it easier to follow along with. But yeah, at the beginning there, we were getting real proggy with the time signature. And then somewhere in the middle, there just became an ambiguity to it. And ambiguity. Well, that's the second time that's popped up. The genre is kind of ambiguous too, isn't it? Like I said, we started with one thing and we kind of moved into another, and I'm not really sure when that change happened. Kind of ambiguous there. I wonder. I couldn't find any lyrics. I'm gonna say that right now. I did search. I found a lot of reviews about this song, about this album actually. I did not find any lyrics for this track though. But Dead as Dreams, dreams as they are, already bring into the concept of immaterial and ambiguity, and not of this plane, not of the physical mortal realm kind of thing. Dreams themselves are this otherworldly concept to begin with. Dead as Dreams is just it's a bit of a morbid take on it, but it also implies a second level of spirituality or supernaturality to dreams as well. So yeah, this concept of ambiguity might show up in the lyrics somehow, but unfortunately, I can't confirm that or deny it because I don't have the lyrics on me. Speaking of the lyrics, though, I told you it's going to be like massive stream of consciousness. The vocalist. All right, so black metal screams have a style, right? I don't know that I can specifically define them, but when I hear them, I'm like, that's the black metal scream. There's something very narrow about them. They're not full-bodied growls or full-bodied false chord screams. They've kind of got this almost like a nasally element to them. But this is different. This didn't, I mean, this had the concept, it had the range, it had that narrow element to it, but it lacked, scratch that. It's not that it was lacking something, it actually had something different in it, which is uh despair, depression maybe, defeat. It wasn't a vocal style that was showcasing power. It was definitely showcasing a lack of control. Not that the vocalists didn't have control over their vocals, not that they were performing this scream poorly or anything like that. I'm not a vocal coach. I don't know what they were doing. Uh, for all I know, they could have been purposely damaging their vocal cords. This wouldn't be the first time a vocalist has been on the channel that has done that. But at least from my perspective, I would assume that they are quite in control of their vocals and have so much control over it that they can make it sound like they don't have control over the vocals, so that it can sound like this character in the story or whatever's going on, the person doing the screaming, is lacking control in the narrative of the song. And like I said, that brings about these feelings, these emotions of despair, of defeat. And there's actually one moment where it I mentioned that the vocalists actually sounded like they were defeated, like they were exhausted or tired. It sounded like they went for a scream and it just kind of came out as a bit of an airiness and just kind of let it go. Like, whatever, I tried, it didn't come out. Um, but yeah, not what I was, especially with the song coming in the way it did, strong black metal ideas in the music. Uh, and like I said, it's adjacent to the kind of vocals I expected, but a bit of a twist on them, which works well with everything else going on here. We started off the song a bit like I expected, and then there's a bit of a twist in there. Um, I think that might be it though. We went over the layering, textures, production, sound, vocal style. That might be it. This was a super dense track, though. There's probably a lot of things that I missed, being that it's my first time listening, and probably a lot of things that I would pick up on a second, third, or even fourth listen. However, this is not my cup of tea, not by a long shot. I do really appreciate some of the new things they're bringing to the table, though. Like I mentioned, there's nuance because of six leading instruments that are in here. And sometimes we do hear some really cool things like some counterpoint going on or harmony that we don't typically see in black metal, well, typically hear in black metal or post rock. And I really appreciate bringing those elements into this and providing a bit of contrast. Speaking of contrast, I'm not done yet. What was up with those one bar segments of like clean guitar and like super amount of space, like removing all the distortion, all the noise, getting rid of that wall of sound for a single pocket of space before bringing it all back. That happened so many. Sometimes it was a one-off, and other times it was part of a riff where we'd do this like call and response idea. Oh, Speaking about silence, there was two riffs in here, I think, that played around with rests. And they got kind of a bit of a jazzy groove going on with syncopated attacks against uh, syncopated resting, I guess you could call it. Little eighth note rests here and there between pockets of notes and gives it this jazzy groove for a couple of seconds. And yeah, that is the complete opposite wall of sound. Wall of sound is about no rests ever, constant attack, constant wall of sound. You can't have a wall if you have cracks in it. That's not a wall. I mean, it is a wall, but it also has a passage to it. It has a hallway, or a doorway. Not a very effective wall if you can walk past it. And yeah, a couple of segments, and once again, just taking what I'm expecting and inverting it slightly, ever so slightly, not completely subverting it, but saying, hey, maybe we could do something a little different for a second. And I think maybe that's where those pockets of clean guitar come in, is just providing contrast and changing things up for a second. Maybe, maybe not. If you have any insight into that, let me know. Here, I think I'm definitely done. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you have anything to add to this. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you enjoyed this or not, if you have any backstory or interviews or something about this specific song, why decisions were made. It is an interesting track that I have a lot of questions about. But yeah, go ahead and drop those links for me, or any knowledge that you might have. Let me know. Hit me up in the comments. Above the comment section is a description box. In there is a link for Linktree. Take you to this menu right here. It has links for everything related to the channel. You can pick up some merch, drop your own special selection, join the Patreon, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord community, email me, lots of stuff. I don't know, there's more stuff there than I talked about. If you could also like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all three of those. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC. We'll be looking at another track that would help me understand black metal's origins, and we'll also be doing a special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.